So, welcome back to the Killer Storyteller podcast with me, Rachel Lynch, a crime fiction author based in the UK, coming through to you from London today. Thanks so much for joining us. And with me here, as always, is my Aussie mate, Kristy Horn. Hi, Kristy.
Hello, Rach. How are you? And hello, everyone. It's great to be here. Thanks so much for tuning in. And yes, I am coming to you from Melbourne, Australia. Hey, before we kick off today, Rach, I have to say a massive thank you to everyone who has been listening into our first couple of kind of mini eps. It's been great to have the support and wonderful feedback from so many people and loads of people who are looking forward to exploring more of your books.
It's been so lovely reading the comments, hasn't it? It's fantastic. And we've only just got started.
Yeah, we sure have. So, yeah, it's been really, really lovely. So, thank you to everyone who's been tuning in.
And hello again.
So, g'day, Rach. How are you? And what's been happening in your part of the world?
Well, I'm sat here, I'm staring out of the window, and it's absolutely thrashing it down with rain. We've had such a beautiful week, and I'm so jealous of your weather, Kristy. I mean, you've been for a bike ride today, haven't you?
I've been for a beautiful bike ride with my new cycling team. We're having a bit of a holiday break at the moment. It's Easter time. So, I've actually been for a swim as well. So, the
Mm,
weather's been really, really warm. I feel like it's not going to break.
amazing.
It's been lovely. So, no, it's been really, really nice. So, today was great. I had a great day. I actually caught some sun.
Oh, beautiful. I mean, we're obviously recording on Easter weekend, haven't we? And
Yeah.
we've had a little mini break to the coast. It was about 2 hours drive away, which I know for you guys over there is, you go to the shops 2 hours, but for British people, that's quite a hike, and with the London traffic as well. So we headed down to the coast, and the weather was beautiful actually, and we went for some long walks through the forest, and it was just beautiful. Lots of pub lunches. So yeah, feeling really relaxed and up for this today. So should we get cracking?
Let's do it. So, Rach, in this episode, we're talking all about the wonderful D.I. Kelly Porter. I have so many questions, but why don't we start at the beginning? Rachel, who is D.I. Kelly Porter?
Gosh, I mean, Kelly was created back in 2016, so almost 10 years ago now. And I just feel as though, I've lived with her for that long. Um, Kelly is the sort of person that I would like to go for a drink with. I trust her. I think she's a loyal person. She's funny. She's wise. But she also admits when she's wrong. She's got integrity. So she's my kind of woman. And I really admire her, and I think that for me that's really important because like I said, I've got to live with her in my head daily, and I feel as though I have. So
Yep.
when we first started, she was about 36. In the book world, you don't really time. You can make time really important, but for our purposes in a series, it's kind of been about 8 years in her life, over the space of the 12 books. So when we first met her in Dark Game, and of course we're going to talk about Dark Game in our very next episode. So Dark Game, the first book, her first case, is actually her first case back in Cumbria. She's a Cumbrian lass, and for the people who are not familiar with that part of the world, you know Great Britain is obviously quite a small island, and Cumbria is in the northwest. And the whole of the centre of Cumbria, it's a very big county. The very centre of Cumbria, you have National Trust land run by a charity, and it's called the Lake District. And that's where I grew up. It's part of me. And we're going to be talking about that today because it is like an extra character. But this is where she grew up. And she actually, when she was in her 20s, she left the Lake District to go and train as a detective in London. And now she's back in her 30s. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is her father's died, so her mum needs her support.
Yep.
And the other one is that London didn't quite go as well as she planned without giving away any spoilers. So there's a push pull going on there. So here she is. She's come back. She's lost touch with her school friends. She's feeling like a bit of an outsider. She's feeling a little bit wounded because London didn't, deliver like she thought it would. It's a sidestep. It's not a promotion. She's still a detective inspector. In London, she was a member of this huge murder squad in the Met, which is policing is done very, very differently there. So she's come back to this very sort of provincial environment and she's nervous. She doesn't know how things are going to go. So these are the circumstances that she returns under. Apart from that, as a side theme, really, and we'll get into this a little bit more later, is this incredible setting. The Lake District was made a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2017. So really, when the series kicks off, because Dark Game was published in 2018, you've got England's highest mountain there, Scafell Pike. You've got incredibly beautiful lakes. It's very dramatic scenery. It's not rolling and gentle. It's very dramatic. You've got mountains going into lakes. You've got a very rugged coastline with lots of wild beaches, lots of interesting wildlife. And one of the endearing things about the Lake District, it hasn't really changed. So she really is stepping back into time. And she feels that. She feels quite uncomfortable in her skin because she doesn't yet know where she fits in. And so really she's relying on who she is as a detective, to introduce herself back into that life. It's all about her job.
Yeah.
And I think in the first one, she does come across like that.
Yeah.
She's still trying to find her way. She's a driven person. She's a resilient person. She's morally decisive, which sometimes, as we all know, in any job can lead to conflict. But she's fierce. She won't back down, even if it does lead to conflict.
Yeah.
Um, and I think, when I was creating her, it was really important that she was a woman because the news coming out of a lot of police forces around the world is that, that they have been incredibly misogynistic historically. And for a woman to break through that has been tricky, not easy. So it was important for me that she wasn't a sidekick to a man.
Yep.
She stood on her own 2 feet, and also that she was a woman who was successful in the force. So those two things were really important um, to me. So that's a little bit of an introduction on Kelly.
And I feel like everybody who has been reading along or reading the books, they have an image of her in their mind. So, Rach, are you able to tell us a little bit about how you created her background and also a little bit of background on some of her relationships?
Yeah, sure. Because I think, if you're going to have a series on a character, she needs to have this interesting backstory. And I mean, I had quite a similar path in the sense that of my geography. Not I was never a police detective, but I grew up in Cumbria, which a lot of the people who read Kelly Porter already know. I think you probably, if you're from this side of the world, you can probably tell with my accent. And it's I think one of the reasons it makes the setting so authentic is that I've been to all of these places that I use. So I left Cumbria to go to university when I was 19, and then I went to London to be a teacher. So I've sort of trodden a similar path, going from a small, tiny little town, which is a very, very different pace. I think the town that I grew up in Dalton is very much like Penrith, where I set Kelly. My little town was called Dalton, and there was about 11,000 people lived there. And then going to London, which is, I think when I moved there, it was probably about 11 million. I don't know. It was a real shock to the system. And I think she's done that. And now she's come back. And I've never actually moved back to Cumbria. But I can certainly imagine what that might be like. I still keep in touch with loads of people there and I still visit. So that just needed, a little bit of imagination.
Yeah.
Um, and of course, it's really important when you're launching into a series to have a nice balance of not just the investigations,
Yeah.
but her personal life too. And whenever I do events, I most of the questions are about Kelly and her personal life. The investigations are you choose a theme, you choose knife crime, or you choose abduction, or you choose serial killing, or you choose vigilante killing, or you choose all these themes which crime fans desperately want, but almost more important is the development of Kelly. That's what people want to get on board with. And so her relationships are really important. And in the first one, we see this blossoming romance with
Yeah.
a local mountain rescue guy who is a lot older than her. He's like 10 years older than her, but I think that from what we've already discussed about Kelly, that's no surprise. I think she needs somebody who's a bit more grounded
Yeah.
than possibly a younger man. He's
Yeah.
got a background too. He's got history. He was in the army. So, he comes to her with a little bit of experience,
Yeah.
a little bit of baggage as well. He's different. They have a fairly casual relationship at first without giving too much away. That's obviously going to develop later
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, we don't wanna get into that too much, but it's also someone very different to Matt the twat.
Yeah. So,
But so there's no spoilers there. If you're reading book 1, you'll know that, Matt,
absolutely,
features.
because
Yeah.
in London, she was disappointed in her professional life, but she was disappointed in her love life as well, because actually she was sleeping with a boss, which we all know,
Yeah.
is not particularly a good idea. So, yeah, Matt the twat was not only her lover but her boss in London, and that's
Yeah.
another reason why she left. So Johnny is the absolute polar opposite. He wears climbing gear and flip flops. He's got no ego. Matt really was a twat. So but that it's important to point these things out.
And when she comes home, she lives with her mum, right? And she
Yeah,
moves in with mum. Book
yeah.
1, she's still living with her mum, Wendy.
Yeah, and that's difficult, isn't it? She's in
Yeah.
her 30s and she goes back to her old room, and she feels really stifled in her body, and there's real tension there, because Wendy, her mom, is wanting to know where she is all the time, and so she feels a little bit awkward. It's also that there's tension there too,
Yeah.
which adds to her development in the first one, I think.
Rach, I've got a couple of questions about Kelly. I've had to cull them because I did have like about 1 billion, and this was going to be a 6-hour podcast.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Rach, what makes D.I. Kelly Porter stand out from other fictional detectives? Because there's a lot out there.
Yeah, the market is really, really packed. I mean, crime fiction's always been massively popular, and crime fans are hugely loyal. So you do have to, when I was creating her, I did purposefully sit down and think about this one, because it's important. The fact that she stands on her own 2 feet without being in a partnership, because you find that a lot of crime fiction, there are two detectives, and it really is a banter between the two of them. Kelly can stand on her own 2 feet, so that's important. But all I can say really is, from the feedback that I've been given over the years, is that she's relatable. um she's normal. She has normal worries. She's
Mm,
fragile. She has the same insecurities as everybody else,
yeah.
about her job, about her family, but she's incredibly hardworking, and she strives to do the right thing. So I think that resonates with people too. And she's also trying to fit in, and with a new team. She's trying to fit in with a new life, and I think a lot of people resonate with that too, because throughout life, we're always trying to reinvent ourselves, and fit in with our environments. You might not move around a lot, like Kelly, um, but we all experience change, and so you're coming to her as quite a vulnerable woman, but she's honest about it. She's not duplicitous. And I think that's what endears people to her.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. No, I feel like I know Kelly, like reading through the books.
I love that because that means I've done my job.
You kind of, I'm going to ask this next question, but you've kind of answered some of the questions there. And the question was around you've described Kelly as smart, principled, and she's fearless. And what inspired you to create her character? And was she based on anyone that you know?
Yeah, I can. I get asked this a lot, and I think that this is something that I think all fans of any genre, any writing, really want to know how much reality is in the book. And I think that there are a couple of answers to this, and I err on the side of write what you know because it's in your head, right?
Hmm.
Um, but as far as reality goes, there are definite similarities. So I grew up in Cumbria. I left. I lived in London. I came back. Oh, what didn't go back, but I've moved around a lot.
Yep.
So there are lots of similarities there. But in the end, I think that when you're trying to create a fictional character, there comes a point where you go with them. So there might be a few details, that are inspired by what I know and what I've lived. But I feel like you in a lot of ways that you come book 3, 4, 5. She's very independent and
Yep.
she is her own woman. And I kind of it's a bit cliched, but a lot of writers say this is that actually when you get to know a character quite well, they then start telling you who they are, and I think that over the course of the series, a lot of her development has been organic. So I might have started with this idea of a sassy, principled, fearless image, but the way that she has met her challenges head on, and I've grown to know her more, she's really developed
Yeah.
on her own 2 feet,
Yeah.
and she tells me what she's going to do next. So I really do have this balanced relationship with her now, which I really love. So I'm
Yeah.
not scrabbling around thinking, right, what can I make her into? What can I turn her into? What can I make her do next? It's all very organic. I love
Fantastic.
that about her.
Yeah. And I won't give any spoilers away here, but I read up to book 7 and then read Shared Remains, which was book, what number was that? 12.
12.
So when I read book 12, there were some gaps missing, although I could obviously follow along the storyline. But I noticed that oh man, you are a powerhouse. You're a real natural leader. And I did see how she had grown professionally and also within herself was really obvious.
That's so interesting. Yeah, because obviously I don't know whether that's the case because I'm busy, writing the next one. But for you to say that, between 7 and 12,
Yeah.
because I do feel that now when I go into I'm writing number 13 now. In fact, I finished it. I'm just about to send it off to
Woohoo!
the
That's
publisher.
exciting.
It is exciting, and I do feel now that she's really comfortable in her own skin, and she's made some life decisions that
Yep.
have anchored her now,
Yeah.
in the North Lakes Serious Crime Unit, and so that development, has it's not come full circle because there's a lot more in there, but for you to confirm that that's the case, that's awesome for me.
Okay, so I've got another question here on Kelly before we jump into the Lake District and the lifestyle scene there. But can you remember, Rach, what was the very first scene you ever wrote with Kelly? And you've kind of touched on this just now, saying how she's organically grown, but did she arrive fully formed in your mind, or what was the very first scene that you wrote with Kelly? Can you remember?
Yeah, I think I tried to channel her anxiety because she's got this baggage. She goes into her first meeting, her first briefing with a different. There's a detective chief inspector who's running the meeting, and so she goes in there. She's very quiet because she wants to watch.
Yep.
She doesn't want to go in and take over because she's had a very different role in London. She's been part of a murder squad, and for people who are listening, in the London Met, everything is parceled out. So, you don't have a detective in a serious crime squad who does everything.
Yeah,
you
right.
know so you have the local groups of detectives who will do robberies, domestics, that sort of thing, road traffic accidents, etc., anything unusual. But once you get to murder, and I think it was probably about 25 years ago, the Met decided to parcel that out, and there are about 21 pods of murder squads set around London who just do murder. So she's
Right.
coming back from that, you know, and so she wants to listen, she wants to learn, she doesn't want to lord it over people, she wants to fit in. So I think her first scene is actually her about her anxiety, and about how she's actually been out on a night out and she's met Johnny. And she wakes up in the morning in a bit of a compromising position. She's like, "Oh shit, what have I said? What have I done?" And actually, that is a metaphor for how insecure she's feeling. She's making a few, you know, poor decisions, based on how she's not feeling very secure at the moment. So
Yeah,
that I think that's the first scene in
right.
Dark Game. Yeah.
Yeah,
And then she goes into the meeting, with that sort of
yeah,
in the background. She's just woken up with Johnny. He's like,
yeah.
oh, now I'm gonna have to put my professional head on, pretend that I know what I'm doing.
We will get to Dark Game in our next episode, but
Yeah, yeah.
it kicks off with a bang, that book. It's just the best. I just loved it so much. I've just recently reread it again, so it's been great rereading all the books. Okay, let's dive into the Lake District and the lifestyle there, where Kelly is. It's her world. So it's like you said, it's almost a character in itself in the series. And can I ask, why did you choose it as Kelly's world, and how does the setting shape her as a detective? Can you explain that to us?
Yeah, I mean, it's really important, and I feel as though it's an extra character in the book as well. It's part of me, massive part of me, because I think I walked up Helvellyn, one of the
Yep.
bigger hills there. We call them mountains, but the rest of the world would see them as little humps. Um, we're very proud of them, um, but they're only about 3,000 feet. Um, However, having said that, they do go from bottom to top, so they do have that sort of childlike quality of looking like a mountain. Some places like Smoky Mountains, for example, in America, you can drive up. So in the Lake District, you can actually see the bottom and the top, and so it does feel as though you're really hiking up a proper mountain, and you go from the bottom and you end up on top. That's when you
Yep.
have your sandwich. So the Lake District really is, part of who I am. But for her, I think that the market, we're talking about the market being saturated, really, really busy, the crime market, and a lot of them are set in cities.
Yep.
And so back in 2016, you didn't have a lot of provincial crime. And I just thought, and my agent agreed. We had this wonderful lunch in London, and he agreed with me that when he found out I was from the Lake District, he thought that would be a fantastic setting. I
Yep.
don't think anyone else was doing it back in 2016. And so, I kind of swapped high rises for mountains, and dumpsters for lakes, because the terrain is actually really hostile. It's so important because it's remote. And if you think about what's important to a crime series and the mood, it's remote, it's wild, um, it's got very questionable infrastructure, so the police can't get around very easily. It's got
Yeah.
terrible mobile phone service, so
Yeah.
victims at that moment where they need to make that call, they perhaps can't. Life is slow. It's a lot slower, than the
Yep.
city, so
Yep.
investigations are frustrating. Crime's a bit more shocking too, because you have this beautiful facade with this gritty potential underbelly. So I love that
Yep.
contrast.
Yeah.
And so the crimes seem to be a little bit more shocking. And I've actually had people write to me and say, I really wanted to go to the Lake District, but I'm not going to now because I didn't realize that was going on. And that's not it. That's not all. I mean, it's got this transitory seasonal
Okay.
population
Yeah,
of
right.
hotel workers,
Yeah. Yeah.
and tourism. So it's really, really hard to keep tabs on these people.
Yeah.
Criminals can come and go and under the radar. So yeah, for me, it's got everything, and it lends itself amazingly to a crime series.
Okay, so moving along now, so we're getting a really good picture of Kelly and her family life and her relationships. Rach, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the cases and her challenges. Um, Kelly has faced some seriously dark cases. What's been the most challenging crime that she's had to solve so far?
I think I do, and I think this is reference to what's going on inside my brain. They are all quite complicated, and that satisfies me as a writer. But if I think about individual tragedies, I've got to say that I think you called the Lottie Davis case
Mm,
haunting, and I think that's a really good way of describing it because it's so devastatingly tragic, and that is actually in Dark Game. So we'll be talking about that next episode, won't we?
yeah,
But without giving too much away, it was really hard because I needed it to be um, shocking, and Lottie's was only 10 years old when she disappeared, but I needed it to be something that stuck in people's minds because throughout the whole this is her first case. So this is
yeah,
the first time people are meeting her. So it's really important that that sticks. And throughout the whole book, the Lottie Davis case keeps coming back to her.
yeah,
And she's just got this feeling that something bigger is going on. It was really hard to research and to write because she's a 10-year-old girl. But I think being honest about crimes is really important to me. I don't write cozy crime.
yeah,
I write about things that are shocking and things that are current and things that are topical. So, knife crime, sex trafficking, drugs, things that uh, are awfully real,
yeah,
too real.
yeah,
Um, but I think that that's just the way that I've organically developed as a crime writer. And I think that there is room for everybody, and people who love cozy crime, they might like gritty crime too. But I do
yeah,
fall into the more darker side of crime. That's definitely true, and I like to be authentic. So I do, research these things really carefully, and I don't want to skirt around things because to
yeah,
me, all crime, all heroic stories are about good versus evil. And my Kelly is very, very good, and my crimes are very, very bad. And it's that constant clashing between the two,
mm.
um, where I think the magic happens.
The one thing that I've noticed, and we watch a lot of crime TV as well here, the storylines are plausible, and the way that the storylines are presented to a reader, and I love reading. It's like, yeah, I could see that happening, and I can see like the whiteboard in the incident room, and the pictures up, and who's linked to what, like a method behind it's like, okay, that is so plausible. I can see that that's happening. Sorry, I accidentally hit the keyboard. And just moved all of our show notes around. I was being really serious then, Rachel. That's funny.
Oh,
I've got another question for you here. Kelly's tough, but she's also human. I just want to ask you about some of the personal struggles Kelly faces and how they've shaped her as a detective. You've kind of touched on some of this, but yeah, what can you tell us about that?
yeah, and again, I think that's really important to have that sort of juxtaposition. She's got this tough exterior because I think women traditionally over the last couple of decades to get anywhere in any career really, we've got to have a little bit of hardness, sadly. You know, think sort of 80s shoulder pads. It's a cliche now, isn't it? But it was true. You look at a lot of memes of just giving the example of my home of the UK. If you think about the memes of Margaret Thatcher, the only man in the cabinet, she wore in cartoons, she wore a suit and smoked a cigar. And I think that that's what we faced as women, and we probably still do in a lot of ways. Softness has been seen as weakness, hasn't it? But the thing about Kelly is that she does have this tough exterior, and but she's also human underneath, so that there is a softness
Mm.
underneath. She doesn't go to a crime scene or watch an autopsy and go, "Oh my God, that's so pedestrian." It does affect her.
Yeah.
These things do affect her. She does connect with her
Mm.
victims, and I think victimology is a really important part of what she does. She wants to be the last voice of the victim because they can't talk
Oh, yeah, I
anymore,
love that.
and that's what makes her dogged. She won't give up on the victim. But and again, like we touched on earlier, she has got this angst in her personal life going on. She's finding it difficult to find her new place in the world, and she does feel a failure. She's got a lot to
Yeah,
prove.
particularly with the relationship with her mum and her dad, who was
Yeah,
also in the constabulary.
I was just going to say they're big shoes
Yeah,
to fill. John Porter's shoes are big
yeah,
shoes
I
to
love
fill.
that how you've worked that into the story as well, but also the way that she's a leader to her team, and she's got a new team, and then there's new team members that come in as well. But the way that she is a leader and leads by example is fantastic, and I love the way that some of her the newer recruits that come in, they look up to her, and then she'll have a one-on-one with them in the car, and she'll ask them to read the forensic report or whatever, so that she'll get their spin on it. So she's always trying to lift other people up as well.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I'm so glad you picked up on that because I just think you get in any managerial position, I think you get the most out of people if you listen to them, and if you don't try and fight them and mold them. I did this amazing exercise when I was a teacher, which was because I was a head of a large history department in a London comprehensive. There's a lot of teachers out there who are not confident in some things as they are in others. So instead of saying, well, you will teach this and you will teach this way, it's about finding out what people are more comfortable with. So her managerial style, I think, like you say, gets the most out of her team because she listens to them, and she also appreciates that everyone's got their little niche. Like there's always a
Yeah.
techie nerd, and
Yeah.
Emma Hyde is a real sort of a very, very clever
Yeah.
cookie, so she brings a different spin on it, and everybody's got their little role. Kate, I'm
Yep.
sure her second in command. Kate's a bit older than Kelly. She's got three teenage daughters, so she's got a lot of experience there. She's got the personal touch. She's very soft, but she keeps Kelly on the on a straight line. She doesn't want Kelly's job either, so there's no
Yeah.
competition there. They work really, really well.
Yeah, I loved her managerial style, and does bring out the best in everyone in her team. And then she gets other team members come in because some of the cases grow.
Yep.
I was going to ask you next about D.I. Kelly and through the eyes of her readers, and we've touched on a little bit of this, but she's built a loyal fan base. So why do you think readers connect so strongly with her, Rach?
Yeah, do you know what? That's a really difficult question to answer because everybody reading is so subjective, isn't it? Everybody has their own little sort of agenda when they pick up a book. It goes from the cover to the hook in the first couple of pages. But with a series, it's very, very different. And you're right, she's sold well over 1 million books, and people keep coming back. As soon as there's a new Kelly, all the others get a little
Right.
surge as well. So she's loved by a lot of people. And when I meet fans of hers, and they're not just women, and they're not just of a certain age, they're older women, younger women, teenagers, young men, ex
Yeah.
coppers, hard, wizened older chaps who have retired. She's popular with a really wide demographic, and I think that if from my point of view, I think it's because Kelly she's strong and heroic but without an
Yep.
ego. She doesn't lord it over
No.
people, and she doesn't seek heroism. I think heroism comes her way quietly. She just does her normal job, and she does it well, but underneath she's got normal scars like we all have that need healing. I think that's what makes her relatable.
With her mental health, she'll go for a run after work after a really long day, and she'll go for a run to clear her head.
Yeah, that's how she relaxes, isn't it? And she is feminine, and I think that's what makes her 4 or 5 or 6 dimensional. She has these feelings, and she does get tired, and she gets overwhelmed, and she gets upset, and so her needs and her worries are exactly the same as any reader, aren't they? Getting out in nature and going for a run. We all know that we need to do it, don't we? But finding time to do it is another story. And I think that's another lovely thing about her coming back to the Lake District, because she couldn't do that in London. So that's all new as well. And so she's like a puppy returning to, she's a kid in a sweet shop. She's got, oh God, I can go for a run, and there's no one around, and I can go up a hill, and it's fresh air, and I haven't got all that black grit in my nose after a run through a London street. So yeah, there's that element to it as well. So there's a lovely relationship that she's starting again between her and the landscape
That's right.
too.
Yeah, she talks about being the most beautiful place on earth, and that comes up a couple of
Yeah.
times in the first book. If you're reading that, you'll read that as well. Wow, Rach, I really feel like I know D.O. Kelly Porter a little bit better now. And as we get into more and more of the books, Kelly's personality obviously grows, and we'll get to discuss those as we go through all of the series. So thank you for, giving us a little bit more information on D.O. Kelly Porter. I absolutely love her.
It's an absolute pleasure, and that I think that's a wrap for this episode, isn't it? Yeah, thank you for listening. Thanks for joining us. Make sure you tune into the next one, which is going to be all about Dark Game, the first one. So if you haven't started the series yet, this is a good opportunity to get into Dark Game before we actually start our next episode. Hope you've enjoyed this one. We're trying to avoid spoilers, aren't we?
I know, yeah. How do you reckon we went on this episode, Rach?
It was brilliant, Kristy. I love talking about Kelly. I love talking to you. And I think we absolutely smashed it.
And this will be out really, really soon. You'll be able to find it on Spotify, or find us on our brand new YouTube channel or YouTube Music. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you've got any thoughts or feedback on today's chat, drop us a comment, because we'd love to hear from you, and really look forward to bringing you the next episode soon. So until next time, see you later. Bye, Ray.
See you next time. Bye, Kristy.